The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. My name is Joni Siegel, and I'm the host for this podcast. Today's episode is episode number 234. We are well into our fifth year, over half, and we hope that our podcast continues to bring messages of hope and help to those of you who need it. Please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, if you can check out our YouTube channel and subscribe to that and give us a good rating on our videos, that would be great, because then people who need help can find us. And that's the whole purpose of the podcast, is to give help and hope. So today we have an interview with a gentleman named John Luppo. And John Luppo is a modern day miracle. He's a man who has endured much trauma, tragedy, and loss. His life is seriously what Hollywood movies are made of. He was raised on the streets of New York City in the borough of the Bronx in an Italian Catholic family, and he went on to become a very successful Wall Street executive. That led him to alcohol, drugs, gambling, and womanizing. He is now sober, clean and sober, and he speaks at prisons and at schools and to kids about overcoming obstacles and staying away from drugs. Let's talk to John Luppo and hear his story. John Luppo, thank you so much for being willing to be on the podcast today and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, Joni. Much appreciated.
So you have quite the story. A lot of the people that we interview have quite the story, but you've got I think, a particularly interesting story. But take us back to the beginning. What was your childhood like? It's quite obvious that you're a New Yorker. So I'm assuming you're from New York.
I'm from New York.
But what was your childhood like? And how did you eventually get into drugs and alcohol? Tell us.
Well, I grew up in an Italian Catholic family in the Bronx. So if anybody ever saw the movie Goodfellas or Bronx Tale,
Yep.
A very popular movie, that's where I grew up. It was a mafia-influenced neighborhood with a lot of characters, and those are the people that I looked up to. My father was a drug addict. My father was an alcoholic. My brother was a drug addict. And my mom was a sweet Italian lady who cooked pasta on Sundays. So, but from that, there was a lot of anxiety in the household, a lot of different dysfunctions going on between my brother and my father. So for my father's alcoholism and for my brother's addiction, it affected me growing up with a lot of different insecurities and so forth. So I started drinking in the schoolyard in the Bronx at 14 years old. My first drink was blackberry brandy. And Johnny, I thought I arrived. I'm 5'4". I became 6'8". You don't want to look at me cross-eyed. I call it the Joe Pesci syndrome, where if you looked at me the wrong way, you had something coming at you. But with all that being said, my brother overdosing many times, in and out of prison, in and out of treatment facilities, and my mother and father having their difficulties with my father's alcoholism. It's a generational curse. It was put into my family. It's no longer there because I broke it, but it comes from my grandfathers, and they were alcoholics. They had their issues. So it stemmed, into our lives. And that's when it started, when I was 14, but it all affected me through my years of growing up in the household.
Yeah, it's hard, I think, for a young person to grow up in an environment like that and, not go down that road, that's all you're presented with on a daily basis. Did you have other siblings, John?
Yeah, I have my brother Robert, who had passed away from heroin. And then my brother Kenny, who was my older brother. There were two older brothers, one 10 years older, Robert. And then my brother Kenny was 7 years older.
Okay.
And, we were very close, typical Italian family. When my mom cooked pasta on Sunday for 30 years, but sweet Italian lady, but we all had some issues going on in the household. that we dealt with. But, God has a plan and a purpose for us.
Exactly. So your one brother died of an overdose, you said?
Yeah. So at 20 years old, I started on Wall Street. Uh, and I had many years of when I was 14 to 20, all the nonsense that comes along with that, drunk driving, fighting, blackout drunk. I was a blackout drunk. So, and I was able to talk to girls, all those things that I was trying to fill myself up with. But like I was just saying, 20 years old, I started on Wall Street. I got a job at a brokerage firm. And my brother Robert died of a heroin overdose of doing cocaine and heroin. He died of speedballing in a hotel in the Bronx. And I got that call. And that was very traumatic to me. I had to go identify my brother with my other brother at the morgue. And at that time, I was on, I was drinking and I was on Xanax. So I really took a lot of Xanax. And I dealt with it, and then my life started to spiral out of control after that, situation where, I didn't really care much about a lot of different things. And then I wound up myself in a treatment facility and coming home and getting sober also for a few years.
How did you end up in a treatment facility? Was that your own choice, or did your family suggest that you go there or put you there?
Good question. After that transpired, my brother's overdosing, heroin, speedballing, and it affected me. I just couldn't care. I was like very reckless, irresponsible in so many different ways with women, irresponsibly financially, irresponsibly with alcohol and drugs. And it just spiraled out of control. And I just found myself getting into a lot of fights and a lot of things transpire where, people were after me for certain things. And I was kind of two-part. One was to go get sober because I really wanted to, but two is to get away from everybody. So I went on the lam, so you say forth, into a treatment facility. But it got me in the treatment facility because I realized how much of a problem I really did have. And I took it really serious and came home and I stayed sober for 2 years. And then I was working on Wall Street and I found great success on Wall Street.
Oh, cool. You were a stockbroker?
Trader.
Trader?
Stock
okay.
trader.
Where'd you work? Just curious. Can you say?
Yeah, I worked at many different firms.
Okay.
I worked at Bear Stearns, which they're no longer in business. I worked at RBC, Royal Bank of Canada.
Yeah.
And I had a couple other small firms.
Sorry, I digress. I used to work for a hedge fund and very familiar with traders. Very. Okay, so you went to treatment. Did that kind of end your Wall Street career, or did you go back there? Or
Yeah. So what had happened? I was working on Wall Street when I had this issue, and I was stamping tickets. I was just in the back office. I was up and coming, and then the firm allowed me to go away. I believe I was away for like 60 days, and I came back, and I was refreshed. And my career started when I came back, and I got all my licenses that I needed, and I found my lane was entertaining and cultivating relationships, where I would go out for dinners and drinking, and it escalated. So I went right back to the drinking and the drugging as I started making a lot of money. And it seems the more dysfunction that I had on Wall Street, the more money I made, and I arrived. But it's the total opposite of, the real world, where you work hard and get sober, or you're trying to be the good citizen. But on Wall Street, the more party you did, the more money you made because of the relationships. And then I started making millions of dollars. Wow. I had 5 houses.
Wow.
I had a bodyguard driver. I had 5 engagements. I had numerous girlfriends. I had all the stuff, I had all the money, I was trying to fill that hole with all this stuff and all the hurts that transpired through my life. I didn't, when you get to that success, a lot of people don't call you out. They're with you. And I produced good money for a lot of people. So, I would go and party for a night and then take off for 2 days or 3 days and then come back.
Nobody was telling you to get clean because you were doing so well.
Yeah. So the more I went out, I'll be like, okay, I went out and I was so hungover from the night before that I couldn't go to work. It was impossible. And I would take Xanax at nighttime to try to not get a bad hangover. But it would take me 2 days to get to a point where I would be okay. And then I would come in. But the people at work, I had people working for me. So, and the more I went out, the more business I did. So who really cared about my well-being as far as, people I'm sure were concerned. But, it was like I went out and I produced.
Right. Right. It wasn't like you were failing at your job. You were doing better.
No, I wasn't failing. I was, I had a lot of issues. And, if you ever see the movie Goodfellas and Bronx Tale and all that stuff, I was very into going out a lot, into the best restaurants. I was a big shot with a big ego, with a low self-esteem. And I knew there was something wrong with me because of my previous years when I went away. But at that time, I was like, maybe I wasn't an alcoholic, but as time escalated, my doorman, my driver, everybody started to ask me, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah. What you made me think of is, Goodfellas, but also Wolf of Wall Street. You made me think of that film too.
Yeah, so that movie, it's a good movie you brought up because those two previous movies where I grew up, but the Wolf of Wall Street, I believe I had a lot of those characteristics as the movie Jordan Belfort, played by Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yep.
The similarities of that.
You were living the life. You were
living the life. It was
a
very exactly like that movie in some ways, and not being, you were able to do anything, get anything. And, greed was the whole thing, money and all the riches of the world.
Yep.
Like I said, I had the houses, I had the cars, I had the women, I had the, everything that you would look on the outside in, but I was hurting inside.
Right. Right. So what got you out of that? What, you had been clean and sober, and then you got right back into the life. What was your point of no return? What happened to make you finally go, this isn't it?
Well, between the time I was on my first treatment facility, there was many years in between I was trying to get sober. So I was sober for about 1.5 2 years when I was 20 to 22. But, as my success took place when I was 25, 26, that's when it took off. And the next 14 years was torment. I was making millions, I had all the houses in the world. I had a big business that I had. And what had happened, I finally got tired. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was trying to get sober throughout those years of those 15 years, but I could never catch it again. And at 40 years old, I had a bad night out. I was at a strip club and I blew a lot of money in the strip club and I lost my wallet, and my driver, had to take me home, and my doorman had to put me in the bed again for the 10,000th time. And I had such a hangover and I was tired of this life that I didn't realize what was wrong with me. I needed to get help. And that's when I started to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, go to meetings. At 40 years old, I came to my knees and I started to go to meetings in Hoboken, New Jersey. because I was living in Jersey, in Weehawken, New Jersey. And I chose to go there. And that's when I started my walk of sobriety.
What does that mean, your walk of sobriety?
Oh,
You would walk to the meetings?
well, when I say my walk, that's when
you
I
just mean your
started
path, your journey.
my
Sorry.
path,
Okay.
my journey,
Okay. Understood.
the beginning of my journey of what I was starting.
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com, or call us at 727-314-7080. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. Sometimes, the hardest thing about getting someone into recovery is getting them to agree to treatment. Bobby Newman, a certified drug counselor with 30 years experience and an over 85% success rate as an interventionist, has created a series of 12 videos that you can use right now to learn every step to get your loved one to agree to treatment. Call 1-833-918-0008 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby.
So there wasn't necessarily an epiphany, if you will. It was more just you finally realized you didn't want to do that anymore and you had to change. What was that like? What was that treatment like, the meetings and such?
Well, at first, because I've tried this for many years, and I used to be on Xanax, and I couldn't give up the Xanax, and that wasn't really true sobriety.
Right.
This time I was giving up the Xanax and the alcohol. So in the beginning, the first 90 days was very difficult because I was squirrely. I had a lot of anxiety, but I tried my best to be sober and it worked, but I had to go through it.
Were you still working on Wall Street while you were going through all this?
I was working on Wall Street and I was attending meetings in the city. I belonged to I was belonging to a very known meeting in the city called the Mustard Seed. And it was a great meeting in the back room. And it was like where all these men and women really helped me through my sobriety. And it was just a spiritual awakening there that was great. But I actually got on Wall Street and starting to get, it's a typical thing. I started getting successful, years of being up and down, made millions, lost it, made millions, lost it. Now I'm on Wall Street and we started our own firm and the trajectory is going up for me again. And I started making the money sober, but I really wasn't living a sober life.
What does that mean? You weren't doing drugs and alcohol. What does that mean?
Well, I was sober, but I was still playing around with the girls, still trying to fill voids. One addiction I had was gambling. I gambled a lot. So it replaced one thing. I had sobriety, but I wasn't really living true sobriety. I met a friend of mine that when we started going to meetings, his name was Patty Burke. And this is a guy who helped me to get connected in Hoboken, New Jersey to all the meetings. And me and him became like best friends. And, we were like buddies going to all the meetings. And then one Sunday, he didn't call me. And I was concerned. Why wasn't he not calling me? And I called his mother and I called my brother who was living with me at the time. Something's wrong. I can't get in touch with Patty. And I wind up going to his house, meeting with my sponsor, Stu, at his house. And we open the door and there's a chain link on the door. So I was concerned. We broke the door down and we wound up finding him dead on the floor due to what addiction did to him. Because a lot of people don't realize that he was having pneumonia a few weeks before. Addiction doesn't only kill you in the sense of taking the drug and overdosing. If you have long-term effects of addiction, that also could create pneumonia and things. And that's what happened to this young man, which is my age. And we wind up finding him dead. And it was traumatic because it took me back to when my brother and the mother got so, her name was Lucille. She got so close to me, and we went to the funeral. And it sparked me after that funeral to do a movie on addiction, to do a documentary called Modern Day Miracles. And it's Freedom from Addiction on Amazon. And I wanted to, there was a ball player in New York City that I grew up in the Bronx that I was a big fan of, a big hero of. His name was Darryl Strawberry. He had his struggles, and I reached out to him to do this documentary in memory of my brother Robert and this gentleman I just found dead. And he couldn't do the movie, couldn't do the documentary. And it was odd that I did reach out to him, but I keep on meeting him at random spots. Till one day, I went to the Super Bowl in 2010 in Miami, and I was more depressed than when I went. I was at my own firm. We had a big company. We were making, the revenues were over 40 million a year.
Wow.
And we were seeing some big things transpiring, and we were in the process of potentially selling the place. And then I meet Darryl after the Super Bowl event. We all went as partners too. And I come home and I meet him at a dinner in New York City at an Italian restaurant, where he led me to, he says, what are you struggling with? I told him little things. I'm sober 3 years. And he says, I think you need God. You need Jesus. And he led me to Christ that night, led me to Jesus Christ that night at the dinner. I had an epiphany. That's when a miracle in Manhattan took place. And then we started becoming friends from there on. And then a lot more stuff took place after that. And I'll like you to go back to you, but I have more of the story.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying, because before you got clean and sober, the body was clean and sober. But oftentimes what we like to say and what we found is that the drugs and alcohol are a solution to a problem, and you have to find the underlying problem. And there's physical addiction, there's mental addiction, and there's spiritual difficulties with addiction. I don't mean spiritual addiction. I'm saying there's mental and spiritual problems. You have to heal all three ways: physically, mental, spiritually. There you go. And it sounds like you had done the physical healing, but hadn't quite handled the mental. And now, with Darryl introducing you to Christ, you were able to handle the spiritual end of it. Does that sound like am I getting it?
That is correct. Darryl led me to Jesus. And then, that alone, he started discipling me and coming up to New York City. And he took me to a TV show in New York City. And I met this TV producer, a beautiful blonde lady. And we started dating. And I was in recovery about 4 years. And Darryl Strawberry and his wife, Tracy Strawberry, wind up marrying us.
I love it.
And I looked really like I found God. I had an epiphany. Everybody at work thought I was losing my marbles because I was like going crazy for God. And then we were about to sell the firm, and we're married. My wife marries a multimillionaire. I had the house, I had everything. And then on a pure technicality, I wind up losing the business. And it was devastating. After I was about to sell the firm, and we wind up losing it on a pure technicality, and I wind up losing all the stuff, all the houses, all the cars. The cars I kept one car, but my poor wife had to go through a turbulent time with me that I just didn't understand. I said, I got my life together. I found Christ, continued to go to meetings, and then I lose all the stuff. I'm like, I thought I'm supposed to gain some of this stuff. And I'm like, I was going to cash out, make 10 to $15 million, and then personally, and then have a great ministry, go out and, preach the gospel. But God had a plan and a purpose a different way. I had to go through a lot, lose all the stuff and gain everything. But it says in the Bible, what does a rich man gain the whole world and lose his soul? That was me. But I had to go through it. And then God does restore. He's a God of second, third, and fourth chances. Because if he could trust you with little, he'll trust you with much. And I started attending a church where these men of God at Every Nation Church in New York City started to disciple me along with Darryl and help me through this very dark time that I could not understand why I had to go through it.
Wow. Quite a story. Did your wife, did she accept it? Are you still together?
Yes, my wife's
Did I not
still
ask you that?
my wife's still with me.
Okay,
She's still with me because
good.
what had happened is, as I said, God's a God of second chances.
Yeah.
He put me back on Wall Street, and all the stuff that I had outstanding, debts and situations, because there was losing the business was one thing, but there was a lot of complicated situations I had to walk through to get through this moment. It wasn't as just me losing and that's it. It would have to go through it. And then God found grace and mercy for me in some way to actually put me back on Wall Street and restore me financially, where he actually cleaned all my debts up, houses were taken care of, things that the stuff he blessed me again with and put me back into a position of helping others. Because for a minute, I was like, I have no idea how I got to this point. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And now I'm sober, living a good life with my wife, but also just struggling financially. My wife didn't know she was going to have to go through what she had to go through, but she hung in there with me. And then God spared me and gave me a second chance.
Well, good for you and good woman. So what are you doing now? You're not on Wall Street. Tell us what you're doing now.
Well, I'm still acquainted with Wall Street. I was just in it for the last 3 years.
Okay.
I was trading, and I always did stuff on Wall Street, doing deals and stuff. So I'm always involved in some capacity. Right now, I'm not with the firm on Wall Street, and I have my own company called 2911 Consultants, which is a Christian company that I help businesses save money. I'm also a minister of the gospel. I have my own ministry called Luppo Ministries, Luppo Ministries.org. And I help people that are struggling in addiction and try to bridge them to relationships to treatment facilities or help them in any way I can. And I have 2 beautiful grandbabies and a great stepdaughter, and a pretty decent life now with my wife, who we have a great out. She helps me with my ministry, and she's still affiliated and works in the industry as a TV producer. But I can't, thank God enough and Darryl and all the people that helped me through the years to get me to where I've come.
Well, I think that's awesome. And you're giving back. And I think that's huge that you're giving back in a big way to other people struggling with addiction. And you have quite the story, Mr. Luppo. So if you had just one message to give the people listening, sum it all up, give them one message of hope.
I would say, either whoever it is, if you're struggling with addiction and you're not struggling with addiction, but you may be going through something. I posted something today on Instagram. My Instagram is John Luppo, Luppo. And I just said, ask, knock, and you will receive. And you just got to don't quit. Don't give up, because there is hope when it looks like you're done and you're down and out. God is there to restore you, to pick yourself up. And if you don't stop giving up and you fight the good fight of faith, God will redeem you from all the issues, because if he could do it for me, he could do it for you. I mean, I had some issues and we didn't really go into the details of some of my stuff, but it was very complicated from my trials and tribulations. And I had to go through this being sober. So it was a lot of things I had to deal with, but God is a God of second chances. And I tell that person, don't give up on the miracle. The miracle is there for the taking. You just got to stay put and realize that God has a plan and a purpose for you.
There you go. I love it. John, how can people reach you or reach your organization if they would like to?
Well, should I give my email?
Sure.
So first I have my ministry is Luppo Ministries, Luppo Ministries.org.
Right.
And my email is johnluppo2911@gmail.com. That's my personal email. And if anybody wants to get my ministry page, they could go on it, Luppo Ministries, and there's a contact there. And I also, if anybody needs help in any which way, please email me or contact me, and I'll be more than willing to get them into a facility or bridge them into sobriety somehow.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John, for sharing your story with us. I really, really appreciate it. It's a good story.
Thank you so much, Joni. I appreciate it, and look forward to listening to it myself when it's all done.
Awesome.
God bless.
Thank you for listening to our episode today. I hope you enjoyed the interview with John Luppo. I think his story is amazing. And I hope that a lot of what he said inspired you to get help and inspired you to seek the help where you can find it. If it's God, great. If it's within yourself, so much the better. But wherever you find it, you can reach out to John. Once again, his email is johnluppo, Luppo, 2911@gmail. You can reach out to him there. His website is luppoministries.org. You can reach out to him there. My point is, there are good people out there who are doing really good things to try and solve this addiction problem. And John is definitely one of those people, and he is willing to help you if you just reach out to him. So thank you so much for listening. We'll be back again next week with an interview. And be safe, get help if you need it for yourself or others. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information, reach out to us on Facebook or go to www.theaddictionpodcast.com. Our email is theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com.